It was a calm Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where the neighborhood seems perfectly normal. The kind of morning that fools you into thinking nothing unusual will ever happen. Birds were chirping in the trees, sprinklers were whirring on perfectly manicured lawns, and the sun was just beginning to crest over the rooftops. But under that serene surface, something was already stirring, and it was about to turn my world upside down. I had no idea that my quiet life was about to clash head-on with the most overzealous Homeowners Association, HOA, I had ever encountered, and that one small violation would trigger a legal storm I could have never anticipated. It started with a letter. I received it early in the morning, tucked into the stack of junk mail and bills. At first glance, it looked like a standard notification, the kind HOAs send out when you're slightly out of compliance with some obscure community rule. I opened it carefully, expecting a minor warning about lawn height or paint color. Instead, what I found made my stomach tighten. The HOA claimed that I had committed a violation serious enough that they were initiating procedures to take control of my house. I reread the words over and over, convinced I was misinterpreting them. Take my house. Over what, exactly? The letter cited a trivial issue, a tiny garden decoration that apparently violated aesthetic codes the HOA had established years ago. I had always followed the rules. Every month I checked my lawn, my mailbox, my driveway. I paid attention to every small detail the OA had ever insisted upon. But apparently that tiny, harmless garden gnome was enough to trigger their wrath. It wasn't just a warning or a fine. The letter stated in black and white that they were proceeding with legal action to seize the property. I felt my hands shake as I read it for the third time. This couldn't be real. Who actually takes someone's home over a garden gnome? Despite my disbelief, I knew I had to act quickly. I called my lawyer first thing in the morning, explaining the situation. His voice was calm but firm. These associations sometimes push the limits, but they rarely win if you know your rights. We'll look for every loophole and clause that could work in your favor, he said. That gave me a small sense of relief, but my anxiety remained. Every conversation with the HOA was tense. Their representatives spoke with the tone of inevitability, as if I had no options left. I felt trapped in a nightmare. Over the next few days, I began gathering documents, HOA bylaws, property deeds, past correspondence. I scrutinized every line, searching for anything that could protect me. That's when I noticed a tiny, almost hidden clause buried in the legal documents, one that the HOA had clearly hoped no one would ever find. It was a clause that protected homeowners from extreme penalties for minor violations, especially when those violations did not cause any harm or financial loss to the community. The clause stated that unless the violation directly affected the safety, security, or economic interests of the HOA, no extreme measures, including property seizure, could be enforced. Discovering that clause felt like finding a lifeline in the middle of a stormy sea. Suddenly, the power dynamic shifted. I was no longer defenseless. I had a legal lever that could stop them in their tracks. I contacted my lawyer immediately, and we began drafting a formal response to the HOA, citing the clause and explaining why their attempted seizure was invalid under the law. The process was painstaking, requiring meticulous attention to detail and clear, persuasive arguments. I had to anticipate every counter-argument they might make and ensure that our response left no room for misinterpretation. The first meeting with the HOA representatives after our legal response was tense. They arrived confident with their files and prepared statements, expecting me to cave under pressure. I remained calm, presenting our case with clarity and authority. I highlighted the exact language of the clause, the history of minor violations that had never led to extreme action, and the principle that property rights could not be overridden for trivial matters. Their expressions shifted subtly as they realized that this was not going to be a simple intimidation. They were now facing someone who knew their rights and was prepared to enforce them. The days that followed were a mixture of negotiation and silent standoff. The HOA attempted to pressure me with small fines, threats, and procedural delays, but we countered each move with precise legal documentation. Every communication emphasized the hidden clause, reminding them that their authority had limits. Slowly, the momentum shifted. What had begun as a unilateral threat became a negotiation where I held significant leverage. While all of this was happening, I also started to research other homeowners' experiences with this HOA. I discovered a pattern. Many residents had quietly paid fines or complied with petty demands, fearing the extreme measures the HOA claimed they could enforce. Some had been intimidated into abandoning disputes that could have protected their rights. My situation, however, was different. Armed with knowledge and a critical legal clause, I realized I was not just protecting my home, I was setting an example that homeowners could stand up and enforce their rights. Throughout this ordeal, I experienced a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at the absurdity of the initial threat, anxiety over the potential loss of my home, relief at discovering the legal protection, and ultimately empowerment as I realized the extent to which one small clause could change everything. I became hyper-aware of every letter, every notice, every minor interaction with the HOA, each small victory, each carefully worded legal response strengthened my position and my confidence. By the time the HOA finally acknowledged that their attempt to seize my property was invalid, I had gained a profound understanding of the intersection between community governance, individual rights, and legal knowledge. What had started as a nightmare over a small garden gnome ended as a masterclass in defending oneself against bureaucratic overreach. I not only secured my home, but also highlighted the importance of reading every document thoroughly, understanding your rights, and being prepared to enforce them when necessary. This first encounter with the HOA was a revelation, not just in terms of property law, but in the broader understanding of power dynamics, entitlement, and the value of knowledge. What seemed like an insurmountable threat became manageable when armed with the right information, strategic patience, and the courage to challenge authority. The story doesn't end here, of course. The HOA may try again, as they do with other homeowners, but now I am prepared, vigilant, and confident that the law is firmly on my side. And that's how a small violation, initially threatening to cost me my home, turned into a lesson about vigilance, empowerment, and the unexpected. Ways hidden legal clauses can change everything. It started with a knock at the door, late one afternoon. I had just returned from work, tired but unaware that my day was about to take a completely unexpected turn. The HOA representative, clipboard in hand, stood on my porch with a look that seemed to combine frustration and smug satisfaction. "We need to discuss your property," they said, the kind of vague, ominous statement designed to make anyone uneasy. I invited them in cautiously, trying to keep my composure, but my mind was already racing. Was this another fine? Another petty complaint? Or something worse? As they sat down, they laid out their argument. The minor violation, the same garden decoration that had been the source of my earlier headache, was apparently much more serious in their eyes than the initial letter suggested. According to them, it violated multiple HOA rules simultaneously, and they implied that continued non-compliance could result in legal consequences that might include removing the property from my ownership. I listened carefully, nodding occasionally, while mentally preparing to defend myself. Their confidence was unnerving, but I reminded myself that I wasn't without recourse. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. The HOA sent additional notices, each more threatening than the last. They claimed escalating fines and even implied that other neighbors had suffered consequences for similar violations. It was a deliberate tactic designed to intimidate and coerce compliance. Despite the growing tension, I knew that staying calm and methodical was my best approach. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. Instead, I spent hours poring over the HOA's past correspondence and legal documents, meticulously noting inconsistencies and potential points of leverage. It was during one late-night session of research that I stumbled upon something critical, a clause that had been easy to overlook. Buried deep in the HOA's governing documents was language that clearly limited their ability to enforce extreme measures for minor infractions. Specifically, it stated that unless a violation posed a tangible threat to safety, property value, or the well-being of the community, homeowners could not face severe consequences such as property seizure. This small but powerful discovery immediately shifted my strategy. Suddenly, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning a proactive defense. With this newfound leverage, I contacted my lawyer to draft a formal response. The document was precise, citing the clause verbatim and outlining why the HOA's actions were not only excessive but legally invalid. We anticipated potential counterarguments, ensuring that our response left no room for misinterpretation. I felt a surge of empowerment. For the first time, I truly believed that the balance of power could tilt in my favor. When I presented the formal response to the HOA, the atmosphere in the meeting changed dramatically. They had come in expecting compliance, perhaps even intimidation, but were met with a well-documented, legally sound argument. The representatives' demeanor shifted subtly. They realized this was not going to be an easy victory. I calmly explained how the violation in question had no material impact on the community, highlighting other instances where similar minor infractions had not been punished. The conversation grew tense, but my composure and preparation carried the day. While the negotiations unfolded, I also started communicating discreetly with other neighbors who had experienced similar conflicts. Patterns emerged. Many residents had quietly accepted fines or made unnecessary adjustments to avoid confrontation. Some had even abandoned property improvements or deferred maintenance to avoid attracting the HOA's attention. It became clear that the HOA relied on intimidation and the general fear of legal consequences to maintain control. In contrast, my knowledge of the legal clause and meticulous preparation placed me in a strong, assertive position. The HOA attempted subtle pressure tactics over the following week. They sent additional letters, implied escalating actions, and even suggested that other board members supported stricter enforcement. But each attempt was met with careful documentation and references to the protective clause. I noticed a gradual shift in their tone from confident and assertive to cautious and restrained. It was as if the realization had sunk in that I could not be coerced without risking legal exposure for them. Throughout this period, the emotional stakes were high. The stress of defending my home, coupled with the absurdity of being challenged over a trivial decoration, created a constant undercurrent of anxiety. Yet, each small victory, each carefully worded reply, reinforced a sense of control. I became increasingly vigilant, reviewing every letter and communication for inconsistencies, and documenting every interaction for potential use in future disputes. Finally, after a series of meetings and exchanges, the HOA backed down. They acknowledged, without explicitly admitting fault, that their approach had been excessive and that no extreme measures would be taken. My home remained secure, and the tiny garden decoration remained untouched. The experience, though exhausting, left me with a profound understanding of the importance of legal literacy, meticulous preparation, and strategic patience when dealing with bureaucratic overreach. By the end of this ordeal, I had not only secured my property, but also gained insight into the dynamics of power, authority, and compliance within my community. What started as a seemingly trivial conflict had become an empowering lesson. Knowing your rights, being prepared to enforce them, and maintaining composure under pressure can transform a potentially devastating situation into a triumph. The HOA, for all its bluster, had met someone unwilling to be intimidated, and the result was a clear victory grounded in knowledge, strategy, and persistence. This experience has reshaped how I view community governance and personal rights. I now approach every communication, notice, and guideline with a critical eye, aware that even the most minor issue can escalate if unchecked. At the same time, I've realized the importance of proactive vigilance, legal preparedness, and the confidence to challenge authority when necessary. What could have been a devastating loss became a story of empowerment, resilience, and the unexpected power hidden within a single, overlooked clause of legal text. The resolution with the HOA, while a victory, did not mark the end of the story. In the days following the legal standoff, I noticed subtle changes throughout the neighborhood. Neighbors who had quietly observed my confrontation began to speak, in hushed tones about their own grievances. Some confided that they had long felt the HOA overstepped its authority but had been too intimidated to act. Suddenly, my experience became more than a personal victory. It was a catalyst for awareness within the community. People began discussing rules, questioning practices, and even reviewing their own compliance documents with the immediate threat. Neutralized, I turned my attention to documenting the experience fully. I compiled every notice, letter, and communication into a detailed timeline, noting dates, interactions, and specific legal references. This meticulous record not only served as protection should any future disputes arise, but also became a resource I could share with other homeowners. I realized that many people unaware of the protections within the HOA's own bylaws had accepted fines and restrictions that were unnecessary. Knowledge, as it turned out, was far more powerful than fear, despite the relief of having defended my home. The situation had left its mark. There was an undercurrent of tension whenever I saw HOA representatives. The board, which once appeared untouchable, now approached interactions cautiously, aware that I understood my rights and would not be easily intimidated. This subtle shift in power demonstrated an important lesson: authority without accountability can be challenged, and preparedness is a critical tool for anyone facing bureaucratic overreach. In parallel, I began sharing my story with friends and family, recounting every twist and turn, every legal maneuver, and every interaction with the HOA. Each retelling reinforced the lessons learned: the importance of vigilance, the necessity of reading and understanding governing documents, and the courage required to stand up against intimidation. I emphasized that these lessons were not limited to one HOA or one neighborhood. Across the country, homeowners are often unaware of the legal protections afforded to them, and complacency can lead to unnecessary stress, fines, or even threats. To property ownership. As word spread, a small network of neighbors approached me for guidance. They were curious about the hidden clause, about how to read bylaws effectively, and about strategies for approaching the HOA without escalating conflict. I guided them, showing them the sections of the documents that provided safeguards and explaining how to communicate assertively but professionally. The process became almost educational, a way to empower others to protect their rights while maintaining civility. Amid these developments, I reflected on the broader implications of what had occurred. The HOA's initial approach targeting a trivial garden decoration was emblematic of a larger issue. When authority is unchecked and individuals are unaware of their rights, minor conflicts can escalate unnecessarily. Yet the experience also highlighted a solution. By being informed, prepared, and composed, individuals can assert their rights effectively without resorting to hostility. Knowledge transforms fear into empowerment, turning potential losses into teachable victories. I also noticed that the dynamics of the neighborhood shifted subtly after my confrontation. Previously, there had been a quiet tension, an unspoken hierarchy where the HOA's preferences and threats dictated daily life. Following the legal resolution, homeowners began to ask questions, to verify claims, and to pay attention to communications more critically. Even small actions, such as checking a notice for accuracy or understanding the language of a fine, became more deliberate. It was as though my experience had served as a wake-up call for the entire community, while the HOA did not openly admit wrongdoing. The subtle changes in their approach reflected a grudging respect for my preparedness and persistence. Meetings became more structured, communications more transparent, and threats less frequent. I had not only defended my property, but had also contributed to a shift in how the board interacted with residents, promoting a more accountable and measured approach. Throughout the ordeal, I learned valuable personal lessons as well. Patience proved crucial. Rushing to confront the HOA without preparation would have been disastrous. Attention to detail saved me from overlooking critical clauses that ultimately protected my home. Maintaining composure in tense situations allowed me to negotiate effectively even when emotions ran high. These lessons, while born from conflict, extended beyond the HOA experience, providing guidance for future challenges in any bureaucratic or authoritative context. In the end, what began as a seemingly minor violation transformed into a profound journey of awareness, empowerment, and resilience. The garden decoration, once the center of conflict, remained exactly where it had always been, a silent reminder of how knowledge and preparation can overturn intimidation. The hidden clause, initially overlooked by both the HOA and myself, became the linchpin of my defense, underscoring the importance of understanding the legal framework governing one's property and rights. I settled back into normal life. I realized the experience had strengthened my confidence and clarity regarding personal boundaries and legal protections. I had navigated a complex situation without compromise, demonstrated the power of informed action, and established a precedent for others in my community. The ordeal reinforced the principle that even small, seemingly inconsequential details can have major consequences, and that preparation, knowledge, and composure are the most effective tools when facing bureaucratic overreach. And so, my story stands not only as a personal triumph, but as a guide and inspiration for anyone who may one day confront similar challenges. It is a testament to the power of awareness, the value of preparation, and the strength that comes from standing up for one's rights, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant the initial issue may appear. The aftermath of the HOA conflict brought both relief and a new perspective. My home was secure, the garden decoration remained untouched, and the immediate threat had vanished, but the lessons I had learned were far from over. I began to understand that this experience was about more than just defending my property. It was about recognizing the broader implications of power, governance, and personal rights in a community setting. The clash with the HOA had exposed systemic weaknesses and highlighted the importance of vigilance for every homeowner, no matter how compliant or cautious they believe themselves to be. In the weeks following the confrontation, I continued to observe subtle shifts in neighborhood dynamics. Homeowners who had previously avoided conflict or stayed silent now approached their own HOA communications with more awareness. Discussions among neighbors became more analytical and less reactive. People began to question the rationale behind fines, review HOA notices more carefully, and even compare governing documents to ensure their actions aligned with both the rules and their rights. My experience had inadvertently become a catalyst for education and empowerment within the community. I also took the opportunity to educate myself further on property law, HOA regulations, and legal precedents. By delving deeper into legal texts and case studies, I gained a comprehensive understanding of the limits of HOA authority and the protections available to homeowners. This knowledge not only fortified my confidence but also prepared me for any future encounters with bureaucratic overreach. I realized that the law, when understood and applied correctly, could serve as a powerful tool to balance authority and protect individual rights. Communication became a critical component of this ongoing process. I started sharing insights with neighbors in informal meetings, helping them interpret notices, identify potential overreach, and respond effectively without escalating tensions unnecessarily. This proactive approach created a sense of solidarity within the community. Residents became more confident, and the HOA, now aware that multiple homeowners were knowledgeable about their rights, began to operate with increased caution and transparency. The balance of power had subtly shifted, and the environment became more respectful and measured. Throughout this period, I reflected on the emotional journey I had undergone. The initial fear and anxiety, the stress of legal preparation, and the tension during negotiations had all been intense, but they ultimately contributed to personal growth. I had developed patience, resilience, and strategic thinking skills that extended beyond the HOA conflict. These qualities became invaluable not only in interactions with the board, but also in navigating broader challenges in life, reinforcing the principle that adversity often carries hidden lessons and opportunities for growth. One of the most profound realizations was the importance of documentation. Every letter, email, and note I had saved proved crucial in demonstrating compliance and leveraging legal protections. This meticulous record-keeping underscored the value of being proactive rather than reactive. In the digital age where communication can be easily lost or misinterpreted, having a clear, organized record can make the difference between vulnerability and empowerment. The HOA, despite its initial aggressiveness, eventually settled into a more regulated and predictable pattern of interaction. Meetings became structured, policies were enforced more consistently, and the arbitrary threats that had characterized previous actions were noticeably reduced. It was evident that my preparedness and assertiveness had created a lasting impact, establishing a precedent that other homeowners could rely upon. The garden decoration, once a symbol of conflict, now stood as a quiet emblem of resilience and informed action. Looking back, the most valuable lesson from this entire ordeal was the power of knowledge combined with calm, deliberate action. Understanding the governing documents, identifying protective clauses, and approaching the situation with a balanced mix of firmness and professionalism allowed me to navigate a potentially devastating scenario successfully. It reinforced the idea that authority is not absolute and that every individual possesses rights that can be defended when equipped with information and strategy. This experience also highlighted the broader social implications of HOA governance. While associations exist to maintain community standards, unchecked power and a lack of awareness among residents can lead to unnecessary conflict and intimidation. My story serves as a reminder to homeowners everywhere. Vigilance, education, and assertiveness are essential tools for protecting one's property and rights. By understanding the rules and their limits, residents can foster a fairer, more accountable community environment. In the final analysis, the ordeal with the HOA was more than a legal confrontation. It was a transformative journey. It taught me resilience, strategic thinking, and the value of community awareness. It demonstrated that even seemingly small issues, when approached methodically and knowledgeably, can be leveraged to create meaningful change. The hidden clause that had saved my home symbolized the often overlooked power embedded within legal frameworks, reminding me that preparation and insight are far more potent than fear or intimidation. Ultimately, what began as a minor violation threatening my home evolved into a profound lesson in empowerment, legal literacy, and community advocacy. The story stands as a testament to the importance of standing up for one's rights, remaining informed, and approaching challenges with clarity and composure. The HOA, once a source of anxiety and intimidation, became a catalyst for personal growth, strategic thinking, and community awareness, a vivid reminder that knowledge and preparation can turn even the most daunting threats into triumphs.